You are watching your baby in a bouncer. You haven't done anything. You haven't made a face, haven't sung a single note, haven't appeared dramatically from behind a blanket. You're just standing there, probably holding coffee that went cold 20 minutes ago, probably running on 4 broken hours of sleep, and your baby looks up at you and detonates. There's no other word for it. Every limb fires simultaneously. Arms out, legs kicking, mouth wide open in a smile so complete, it seems to involve muscles that shouldn't be involved in smiling. You feel it hit you somewhere in the chest before you've even processed what you're seeing. You grin back. You probably say something like, "What is that about?" You maybe call someone over. You pull out your phone, miss the moment, feel briefly guilty, put the phone down. Here's what you didn't know you were watching. That smile, that full-body detonation of joy, is not a smaller, simpler version of what you feel when something makes you happy. Developmentally, neurologically, and structurally, it is something else entirely. Researchers who have spent careers mapping infant emotion have reached a conclusion that almost never makes it out of academic circles. The way a baby experiences joy is not just different in degree from adult happiness, it is different in kind. And understanding exactly how different changes everything about what you are doing when you show up for those moments. Most people carry a version of the same assumption. Babies feel happy the same way adults do, just more openly. The emotion is identical underneath, joy is joy, and the baby version is simply a less filtered expression of it. They haven't learned to suppress it yet, so it comes out louder and bigger, but the underlying experience is basically what you feel when something good happens. Reasonable, intuitive, almost certainly what you'd say if someone asked you right now. Here's the specific problem with that theory. Adult joy is a top-down process. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, the part responsible for planning, context, and meaning-making, evaluates a situation, runs it against memory and prior experience, assigns it a relative value, and then shapes the emotional response accordingly. Something good happens and your brain is already doing the work of filing it, comparing it, moderating it. The joy arrives pre-contextualized. A baby's prefrontal cortex is not yet operational in this way. Not even close. The circuitry that would moderate an emotional response simply hasn't been built yet, which means that when a baby experiences joy, there is no evaluating layer, no comparison to yesterday's joy, no background process running a cost-benefit analysis on how good this actually is. The emotion is processed almost entirely through subcortical structures, brain regions that predate language, predate memory, predate self-awareness by an enormous margin. The adult experience of happiness is a curated exhibit. The baby's is the unprocessed source material before the building exists. Your baby isn't feeling a simpler version of what you feel. Your baby is feeling something your brain is no longer structurally capable of feeling. But here's where it gets stranger. Because if babies are running emotion through a completely different architecture, researchers wanted to know exactly what that looks like inside the brain. And what the imaging data showed was something that reframes the whole picture. The NIH Baby Connectomy Project, a large-scale neuroimaging initiative mapping how infant brains develop connectivity from birth through toddlerhood, has used resting state functional MRI adapted for infants to measure which brain regions are communicating with each other and how strongly. What they found in the connectivity data and what researchers publishing in the journal Developmental Cognitive Neuroscience have continued to document centers on one particular relationship, the connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. In adults, that connection is essentially the braking system for emotion. The amygdala, the brain's primary hub for processing emotional signals, fires, and the prefrontal cortex immediately steps in to moderate the output, shape it, contextualize it. Contextualize. Decide how much of it to let through. In infants during the first 6 months of life, this connection is operating at roughly 30 to 40% of adult levels. Barely installed, like a circuit breaker that exists on the blueprint but hasn't been wired into the system yet. The amygdala is running at full output. There is no break. Joy doesn't get modulated or adjusted. It arrives at 100% of available intensity and goes directly into the body. The adult brain is a power grid with transformers at every junction. Full voltage comes in, gets stepped down to safe and usable levels before it reaches anything. The infant brain is the same grid with no transformers anywhere. The charge goes straight through. Your baby isn't overreacting when they completely lose it over a game of peekaboo. Their brain is running emotion at full voltage with no circuit breaker installed. Now, I need to tell you about what this means for how long a baby can actually hold joy. Because here's the part that surprises people, and the numbers, when researchers put them on a timeline, revealed something that reframes almost every interaction you've had with an infant. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences, along with teams at UC Davis's Center for Mind and Brain studying what developmental scientists call affective lability, the speed at which emotional states shift, have found that in infants under 6 months, full emotional state transitions can occur in under 90 seconds. 90 seconds is roughly the time it takes to read a single paragraph aloud. For an adult processing a comparable emotional shift, the transition typically unfolds over 20 to 40 minutes of conscious experience before the new state fully arrives. Here's what makes that finding counterintuitive. You'd expect that more intense joy would last longer. More fuel in the engine should mean a longer burn. But the same absence of prefrontal wiring that makes the joy more intense is precisely what makes it less stable. Adults can sustain a positive emotional state partly because the prefrontal cortex is actively maintaining it, reaching back into memory, forward into anticipation, threading the present moment into a narrative that keeps the feeling alive across time. A baby cannot do this. There is no such infrastructure yet. The joy exists entirely in the present moment. The moment the stimulus shifts, the emotion shifts with it at exactly the same speed it arrived. This is not moodiness. This is not instability. A baby who moves from laughing to crying in 30 seconds is not being dramatic or manipulative. They lack the prefrontal hardware to stabilize an emotional state across time. The emotion is complete and real while it is happening, and then it is gone. And the next one is equally complete and real. They are not moving between emotions. They are living entirely inside one at a time, at full intensity, with no residue from the one before it. Your baby isn't moody. Your baby is experiencing each emotion the way you experience once-in-a-lifetime moments, fully present, fully consuming, and fully gone. Now I need to tell you about a specific experiment that took these findings and made them personal in a way that hit researchers harder than the data alone. Because scientists weren't just interested in how babies feel joy internally, they wanted to know what happens to that joy when a caregiver stops responding to it. In the late 1980s and 90s, Dr. Lynn Murray at the University of Reading designed a paradigm that has since been replicated and extended across multiple institutions. The setup is called the double television paradigm. A mother and her infant are placed in separate rooms. They can see and hear each other through live video screens, a warm, normal, responsive interaction mediated by a monitor. The baby is engaged, reaching toward the screen, smiling at their person's face appearing on the display in front of them. The connection is real, even at a distance. Then, without telling the mother, the researchers switch the infant's feed. The baby is now seeing a recorded replay of the mother's face from seconds earlier. The same face, the same warmth, but no longer live, no longer contingent. The mother's expressions can no longer respond to what the baby is doing in real time. Within 20 to 30 seconds, the baby notices. The smile begins to falter. The reaching slows. The baby does what infants do when they lose the thread of a social connection. They try harder, amplifying their signals, and then, when that fails, they pull back. The joy, which was firing at full voltage moments earlier, begins to lose power. Not because anything changed in the room, because the circuit lost its second terminal. What, doctor? Murray's research established is something that ought to be written somewhere a parent sees it early. For an infant, joy is not a solo neurological event. It is a two-terminal circuit. The baby generates the signal, the caregiver completes it. When you respond to your baby's smile, when you mirror it, meet it, let it land on your face, you are not just being warm. You are literally enabling the full neurological completion of your baby's emotional experience. The loop closes, the circuit holds. When you are present in body but absent in attention, the signal fires and finds nothing. The joy goes unfinished. Your baby isn't performing happiness for you. Your baby is reaching out with an incomplete emotion, waiting for you to finish it. And now I need to say something important. Because there are babies for whom this circuit, the joy signal reaching outward, the caregiver completing it, develops along a different trajectory. And the behavioral markers are observable, they are specific, and they are worth knowing. By 2 months, most infants produce what pediatricians call the social smile, a smile directed specifically at a face rather than triggered by internal sensation or random movement. By 4 months, socially contingent positive affect should be clearly established. Smiles and vocalizations aimed at a caregiver's face that are meaningfully different in quality from reactions to objects or patterns. By somewhere between 6 and 12 months, shared joy, laughing in response to a caregiver's animation, tracking an adult's emotional expression, and responding in kind should be deepening, not leveling off. What developmental pediatricians flag as worth discussing is not a baby who smiles less than average. Temperament varies enormously, and a quieter baby is not a baby with a developmental concern. What draws clinical attention is a specific pattern. An infant who responds with positive affect to objects, lights, movement, and patterns, but who shows a reduced or flat response specifically during face-to-face social interaction. A baby whose joy doesn't seem to reach toward another person. A baby who used to light up during eye contact and no longer consistently does. This is not a diagnosis, not an alarm, not something to carry alone into a spiral of worry. It is a conversation to have with a pediatrician, and it is worth having early because of a fact that does not change regardless of the concern. The brain's plasticity in the first year of life is something it will never recover. Intervention at 6 months reaches circuitry that intervention at 2 years cannot. You are the most finely calibrated instrument available for reading your own child's face. You have logged more hours of direct observation of that specific face than any researcher ever will. If something about the quality of the joy, the way it does or doesn't seem to reach toward you, the way it lands or doesn't, feels different, that instinct is information. Use it. What all of this points toward, when you lay it out in sequence, is something larger than infant development. Adults spend genuine effort, years of practice, structured therapeutic work, dedicated attention, trying to access presence, trying to feel something fully, without the background layer of comparison, memory, and forward projection that runs constantly underneath adult experience, trying to be entirely inside a moment rather than narrating it from a slight remove. Babies are doing this by default, constantly, as their baseline state of existence. Every moment of joy your baby has experienced has been the only moment of joy that existed for them at that time. Not better than the one before it, not smaller than it could theoretically be, not already fading into the awareness that it will end. Researchers who have spent careers studying infant consciousness often arrive at a version of the same uncomfortable observation. We don't grow toward this kind of experience. We grow away from it. We build memory, language, self-concept, and narrative, and those structures give us almost everything that makes us human. And in the process, we lose the ability to feel anything at full intensity without the commentary running underneath. Your baby's joy is not a rough draft of the person they're becoming. It is something that is already right now in the process of becoming less. One new neural connection at a time, the unfiltered version is being replaced by a more sophisticated and more moderated one. What you do with the window while it is still open is the point. So the next time your baby detonates over your face appearing in the doorway, remember what is actually happening. Their amygdala is at full output with nothing moderating the signal. There is no prefrontal circuit telling them this is a 3 out of 10, calibrate accordingly. The joy is arriving unprocessed, uncompared, and complete. And it is reaching toward you not as an audience, but as the other half of a circuit that only functions when both ends are live. I want to know about a specific moment, not just that your baby smiled. I want to know what set it off. How old were they? What were you doing or not doing? Drop it in the comments because I want to map the geography of this. The moments parents remember, the ones that stop them completely, tend to share something specific underneath, and I want to see if you notice the pattern too. And if you want to understand why your baby cries harder the moment they see you after you've been away, not when you leave, but when you come back, when your face appears and everything seems to get worse before it gets better, that is the next video. Not because they're angry at you, not because they're being dramatic, but because of something happening deep inside the attachment circuitry that most parents completely misread. Once you understand what's actually going on, you will never feel guilty about coming home again.